Same generation, same pressure, same impossible expectation. Become the face of football after Messi and Ronaldo. But here's the problem. Football doesn't usually allow two kings. And right now, the biggest question in the sport feels impossible to answer. Who actually owns the future? Kylian Mbappe or Erling Haaland? Because while they belong to the same generation, their paths couldn't be more different. One moves like football was built for chaos. The other looks like chaos was built for him. And somehow, both feel inevitable. Let's start with Mbappe, because for years he looked like the obvious answer. World Cup winner at 19, already carrying the pressure of an entire nation, already performing on football's biggest stages before most players even figure out who they are. And then came 2022, the World Cup final, the moment that changed everything. France falling apart, Argentina taking over, Messi standing one step away from immortality, and somehow Mbappe refused to let football move on without him. A hat trick in a World Cup final. Read that again. A hat trick in the biggest match football has. Not normal, not human. The kind of performance that tells the world, I'm next. But then there's Haaland. And honestly, he feels like football's cheat code. Because while Mbappe creates magic, Haaland creates fear. Defenders don't just mark him, they survive him. Everything about him feels unnatural. The speed, the strength, the finishing, the movement. He doesn't need 10 chances. Sometimes he barely needs one. And somehow, he made scoring goals start to feel boring. That's how ridiculous the standard became. Another hat trick? Normal. 40 goals? Expected. Breaking records? Routine. And that's scary, because football history remembers players who change expectations. And Haaland is already doing that, but here's where the argument becomes impossible. Because this debate isn't really about talent, it's about legacy. Mbappe feels like the superstar football always wanted. Global icon, big moments, big pressure, big personality. The kind of player kids pretend to be in the backyard. But Haaland, he feels inevitable, like some unstoppable machine football accidentally created. Less drama, less spotlight, just destruction. Every single week. And maybe that's the real difference. Mbappe feels cinematic. Haaland feels terrifying. But football doesn't belong to the most talented player. It belongs to the player who owns the biggest moments. And right now, that's where Mbappe still has the edge. Because international football changes everything. Champions League nights matter. League titles matter. But World Cups, that's where immortality happens. And Mbappe already owns moments most players only dream about. Still has one giant question hanging over him. Can he dominate international football the same way? Because greatness feels different when an entire country depends on you. And eventually, that pressure comes for everyone. But here's the twist nobody wants to admit. Maybe football doesn't belong to one of them. Maybe this next decade becomes their rivalry. The kind football hasn't truly had since Messi and Ronaldo. One player built for magic, one built for destruction. One creates moments, one overwhelms systems. And honestly, football might need both. Because rivalries create eras, not individuals. Still, if the next 10 years started tomorrow, who are you betting on? Mbappe or Haaland? Because one of them won't just dominate football, he'll define it.